Brown lets it fly. Bottom, a three.
From behind, knocking it away. Tatum cashes in.
Pritchard got it back inside. And one.
What's up, everyone, and welcome in to your Celtics source. Happy Tuesday morning here, and the season is finally here, man. It's been a long off season, trades, free agency, all going, the way we expected it to go, but obviously a saddening feeling as we look at this team that we're going to get into this season and what the expectations are and what players are saying. And I don't think they're going to be, the team overall, they're not going to be as bad as people are, making them out to be. I think this is a solid core, but it is always, tough to lose so many veteran players and bring in a whole new squad that doesn't have the chemistry and all that. It's going to take time, right? And that is where I'm going to start today. I do want to talk quickly about Al Horford signing with the Warriors, which we did expect. The Warriors were waiting out for, I think, till the start of training camp for financial reasons. I'm not sure exactly what they are. But, as for Al Horford, right, he's going to a team that is trying to compete for a championship in Steph Curry's last hurrah, right? And he's getting higher pay. He's contributing on both offense and defense. He is very similar to a guy like Draymond Green, right? At this point, maybe Draymond Green is slightly better defensively, but they're both switchable bigs that can play the center position if needed, right? I think the Warriors are still going to go with a center. Maybe it will be Al Horford with Draymond Green on the floor as well. But he's a leader. Not that that team is short on any leaders. But I'm not going to say it puts the Warriors in contention automatically, but I definitely do have them as a top 6 team in the West, I think, with Jimmy Butler as well, Steph Curry, Horford, Draymond Green, and obviously some of their younger role players around the perimeter. Right? As for the Celtics, you lose Horford, you lose on his on-court impact, his presence, just a major hole at that center position now, which we'll talk about. There are a couple players, I think, Queta, we've talked about this all offseason. He's going to be your starter. Maybe a Chris Boucher, maybe a Garza, maybe, Amari Williams. There are plenty of guys, but it's going to be a center of committee. And, the bottom line of this is really just, Horford made a rational career-maximizing move, really, with, obviously the Celtics are not trying to compete. We're not saying not trying to compete, but they are not going all in this season. And given that Horford is not going to be around the league much longer, it makes sense that he would try and go and, see if he can win one more championship just to add to his already Hall of Fame career, in my opinion. Okay, we'll get into the media day here. As always, right, the start of a season, media day was lively, upbeat, a lot of positivity before any game has been played, right, and that makes sense. Maybe even more positive, I wouldn't say more positive than previous years, but definitely on par with them. There was no drop-off from the player's side, at least, right? Tatum, was praised for his offseason work ethic. Joe Mazzulla, I thought, did a great job of, sticking up for his player, right? He talked about how whenever he could be around to help Jayson Tatum, whether that be rebounding, passing, in the gym with him, just to help JT get through a tough offseason for him, right? Which makes sense, right? And you're looking for your coach to do that, which I think it's huge, right? We talk about Alex Cora a lot on the Red Sox side and how he's a player's manager, right? He coaches for his players. I think Joe Mazzulla is very similar, right? He might be a tough coach, but he definitely is there sticking up for his players rather than, just trying to, I wouldn't say, just care just about the analytics. Yes, he's very analytically minded, but he's also, a guy who can see who has it going at the moment, put them in maybe a very similar to a Alex Cora in that way. I think Jaylen Brown, he looks very relaxed, comfortable, confident as he takes on the role as, the 1A player on this team, right? And he has to be focused on his defense, his playmaking. Those are the two biggest things that we need for his defense. It has to be back like what he had in 2024 in the finals run, right? And how he was just guarding the opponent's best player, right? Playmaking, we haven't seen that in the numbers yet, but I do think last year was a huge step in his playmaking career, and I think now that Tatum's not there, the numbers will actually follow him. So I think Jaylen Brown, a leader. It's going to be, I think Brown, White, Pritchard, those are the leaders on this team. You also have, I think it's going to be a lead by committee in those three, but I do think it has to be those three. You can't have, I'm not saying there can't be other leaders, but if those three are not the biggest voices in the locker room, I think this team's going to have a tough time, right? And it's all going to depend on how they start this season, right? If they go 5-15 to start the season, yeah, it's going to be a rough season. But if they can find a way to capitalize on some of these easy games to start and get off to a strong momentum and then can carry that through the season, we could see Jayson Tatum come back in middle of winter, and this team could be a late playoff contender. But I think the biggest thing for this team overall is the style of play, because in previous years with Jayson Tatum, it was a very slow, methodical offense: drive, kick, look for open threes, make the extra pass, make one more extra pass, make another extra pass, and find an open shot. And almost every single guy this year, of the returners this year, said they want to play with pace and transition, right? Starting with Brown, of course, who has repeatedly, urged the Celtics to do this, right? And I think that's just how they have to play. They have to play more like a Indiana Pacers offense or a Oklahoma City Thunder offense, where they just get steals and they get out in transition. They don't wait to set up an offense. If they see a play, even if it's not the play that was called up, they go for it, right? There has to be more of that, because they don't have the guys this year to sit in the corner and shoot threes. They have a couple, but way less than they had last year. And so you cannot rely on, someone to just bail you out on a three. You have to take an opportunity to score a basket when that opportunity comes, right? I want to see a lot of points scored in the first 10 minutes of a shot clock instead of waiting for the last second to make a shot, right? Lots of cutting, off-ball movement, setting picks for other players, not just the ball handler. It can still be a heavy three-point team, but the spacing's not going to be the same without Horford, Porzingis, Holiday, right? And that combo, right? And so you have to find a way to, either take threes on the dribble, which Pritchard is great at. I would like Hauser to be better at that. Anthony Simmons could be pretty good at that. But other than that, you're going to have to find ways to get a three without, relying on some guy to knock it down from the corner, right? And that's where Anthony Simmons can be a huge factor, right? He, there were lots of rumors this offseason that he was going to be traded for, cap space or whatever it may be. And, we are in training camp here, and he is still with the team. I don't think he's going to be traded at this point, right? Despite all these rumors and whatever. Defense is definitely a concern with him, right? He acknowledged, he actually acknowledged it yesterday that it's a choice and that he has to prove that he can buy into this defensive scheme and put in the effort, right? There are some guys that are just, really bad at defense, and it doesn't matter how much effort they put in, it's still going to turn out bad. But for most people, most players, if you put in enough effort, you can get out a solid result. And I do think that is true with Anthony Simmons, right? Pritchard is able to do that at a much smaller size and body shape than Anthony Simmons is. Anthony Simmons should be able to do it, which I do think with Brown, with White, with Pritchard, with Queta, and with Joe Mazzulla as the coach, I do think that he's going to be able to, at least be better than he was last year. Right? Especially because, it's a contract year for him, right? So that motivation could push him to, be a well-rounded, both sides of the ball player, right? Even if he's not going to be on this team next year or in the plans of another championship run in Brad Stevens or Joe Mazzulla's eyes, he could be a key piece for another team if he can prove that he is worth being that this year, right? And it's not about being selfish. It's not like stacking up your stats and whatever. But if he plays like he's in a contract year, it'll help the team no matter how if he plays well, it will help the team. That's what I'm trying to say. Right? He's not going to be that selfish player because the Celtics just don't have that kind of couple of those players, right? If Brown wants to be selfish this year, it's going to lead to turnovers. It's going to lead to, throwing the ball away. It's going to lead to all that stuff that we've seen in the past, right? So Brown knows he can't be a selfish player and just score all the points. He has to, rely on his teammates, even if they're not up to the level that he is at, right? And, depth is a huge concern in this regard because, right, you have your top core, Brown, White, Simmons, Pritchard, Hauser maybe. You have a big front court question, right? Queta, Garza, Boucher, even Amari Williams, all unproven players, right? Queta has the most experience, which is why I've been saying for weeks he's going to be the starter, but it just depends on how he does in training camp, and I do think it will be a, play until you lose the position, right? So Queta will start, and if he messes up, we might not see him again for a while, at least in the starting position. Right? And, bench players, the 6 to 15 have to step up and be, they have to, as a committee, play like the 7th or 8th guy on the team. It doesn't have to be all of them at every time, but someone each night has to step up, right? And this could come from, a number of guys. It could come from Jordan Walsh, Bill Shireman, Josh Minott, or Luka Garza coming over from the Wolves, who don't have much NBA experience, but they do have more than some of the other players. Off-season decisions here play. I'm not saying, as we get into training camp, these next couple of weeks, the team could still be deciding on, there are more guys in training camp than they have spots on the roster. So they could bring in guys, they could cut guys, right? Horford, Queta are gone. And Boston, the Celtics did not, try and fill those spots because obviously they can't with the money situation, right? And Brad Stevens, he framed it as, these apron limitations. That's what he framed it as. Some guys will say it's ownership avoiding spending, but there was no way they were going to spend $500 million last year or this year, especially with Tatum out, right? So there was no way. And I actually do think they got lucky in some cases, right? Getting back Anthony Simmons for Jrue Holiday is huge because there's no way. I mean, that's just in my opinion, that's a bad job by Portland because Portland's not ready to contend. And so Jrue Holiday is that, final touch to a contending team. He's not going to be the driving offensive force or defensive force at this stage in his career. So I think that's a mistake by Portland to get rid of one of their core, young, offensive, talented players in return for someone who's just going to be to help around the edges. But, you also lose... I think that I talked about this earlier, but the culture thing, right? Losing Horford, which I think was the biggest, that's going to be the most damaging, I think, in terms of the culture, because his leadership, his durability at center depth was so huge for this team. And now it becomes the weakest link of this group, because it's easy to, mix and match guards, forwards, all those, depending on where you need them, right? But it's really hard to find a center who can mix and match as well, right? You don't find many of those guys that can play both the forward position and the center position, right? And Al Horford was one of a kind in that way. I'm going to move on here. We're going to talk about coaching and culture, and then we'll get into the season outlook as we continue here. Joe Mazzulla has one of the toughest seasons ahead of him. And that is not only the roster he has ahead of him, but just, building relationships and uplifting all these guys to a level that they're not capable of on their own, right? It starts with the relationship of working with Tatum, which I mentioned earlier, and visiting players over the summer, trying to earn that respect, that buy-in, right? And then it also has to be seen by, he can be seen as... What I'm trying to say is he can be seen by some of these new players as, a little quirky maybe, right? He has a different coaching style than an outsider, coming in expects. Maybe at this point they expect, but at first, he does have that different style that you have to get used to, right? And he told Josh Minott that he'd run through a wall for him. So that's a way to, try and build confidence in a young guy who hadn't got much playing time on the Wolves, right? And, his first real test is going to come when they suffer multiple losses in a row, right? Can he get this team? They go 15-8 to start the season, something like that. And then you come that time in December and January where, this team they're going through playing lots of hard games and they cannot get anything to go offensively, defensively, and they have multiple 3-game losing streaks, maybe even more, right? Can Joe Mazzulla find a way to, turn this around and get them back on track? I'm going to keep this relatively short here. We're going to talk about season outlook, and then I'm quickly actually at the end I'm going to talk about the Red Sox-Yankees, huge wildcard game tonight before we wrap it up, because obviously we are going to be back at the end of the week with a full NBA all-team preview, and throughout this week I will be reacting to more media day coverage coming out. But the season outlook here. The Celtics, historically, they overperform in the regular season, right? I don't think it's going to happen with this much thinner roster. The playoffs are not going to be one of those big storylines for this team, at least at first. Right? Coming in previous years, it's like, can this team go back-to-back? Or before, can this team win a championship, get over the hump? Or, how does this team, rebuild on their run the year before, right? Or build off of their run before? How can they find a way to get over the hump, as I just said, right? And it's not going to be the case this year because there are no expectations on this team, right? You're not going to get my guess is you're not going to get a lot of coverage from the national media this year because there are just a lot better storylines to be focusing on than the Celtics, who are going to, I'm not going to say they're going to be slept on completely. They're going to be middle of the pack is where, right? They're not going to be a lottery team way down there. They're going to be a middle of the pack. They're just going to move along the season and get not much thought on. If Jayson Tatum comes back, that'll probably be a big day. Obviously, it's going to be a home game. There'll probably be coverage of that as well. But that's not till way into December. Not December, into January, February, maybe January at the earliest. I said December because it looks like, he might be able to play actual basketball by then. But we'll see how long it takes for him to clear medically. It is that gap year feel, as I just said. It's not a tank because they have so much talent on this team still, right? People forget how. Not people forget. It goes by people how loaded this team was beforehand. The fact that you still have White, Brown, Pritchard, Hauser, all these guys who are just NBA, ready players. Some of them role players, but most of them can lead a team. Right? White, could this be an all-star year for White? Pritchard, could he be a huge... Could he be the two-man... Could it be Brown and Pritchard that are the biggest scorers on this team, and then White sort of cleans it up and makes the plays for everyone? Could that be how it goes? Could White be scoring 30 a night? Could Brown be scoring 30 a night? All these guys. It could be one night Brown scores 30, another night White scores 30, another night Pritchard scores 30, which is really how you want to play because it means everyone's getting involved, which is going to help this team overall. Players, they cannot dwell on 1 loss, 2 losses, 3 losses. They have to find a way to get out of slumps because it is the team that could get hot and, get going, and it also is the team that, if they're in a slump, they could continue that slump just because they don't have as much talent to get out of it. And the East is weak, right? You have injuries in Indiana, Halliburton, same injuries Tatum. You have Philly, Miami. The Knicks and Cavs are going to be pretty good, I think. But I don't have another team. There are definitely teams up there. You have the Detroit. You have, you have Orlando. You have, you have maybe the Bucks. Maybe I'm trying to think of just other teams that could be in the mix. But there are really only 2 cut favorites, which I think are the Cavs and the Knicks. Right? I think the Knicks are going to win the conference this year. But we're gonna wrap it up here. Follow on social media. This video will be available on podcast format later today. So make sure to listen there on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. And before we wrap it up here, I will quickly just talk about the Red Sox game tonight. Garrett Crochet, Max Fried, Game 1 of a Wildcard series. Red Sox in the playoffs for the first time since 2021. And I'm torn. Obviously I'm rooting for the Red Sox, but I'm not sure, actually. If I take off my Red Sox fan point of view and put on just a MLB point of view, I'm really not sure who wins this game. Because I do think Garrett Crochet is slightly better than Max Fried. But Garrett Crochet has that tendency to give up the long ball, the home runs, which the Yankees, are the best team at hitting. Right? And it might come down to whoever hits the most home runs wins the series, which, is probably going to favor New York then, especially with the Red Sox sort of without Roman Anthony. But then you also have the fact that if Garrett Crochet can find a way to stay away from the home run ball and the Red Sox can play clean defense and, wreak havoc with their base running, it could cause the Yankees to sort of fall back and, fall back on their defense and, maybe you see a couple errors, right? They're sloppy. They can be a little sloppy on the base pass as well. Both these teams can be, but we've seen it, historically when the Red Sox play the Yankees this season, that the Yankees find a way to, make some sort of error or base running mistake. Not that the Red Sox don't do that as well. But if Garrett Crochet goes deep and then he passes it on to, a Whitlock, a Chapman, I do like the Red Sox bullpen, those two guys at least, over the Yankees bullpen, right? I think the Yankees bullpen have more guys in general, but I think the two guys for the Red Sox are stronger than any of the Yankees players, right? And historically, whoever wins Game 1 almost always wins the series, so it's going to be huge for Garrett Crochet to put up a huge outing and win this Game 1, so the Red Sox can go with Bayo tomorrow and hopefully not have to worry about a Game 3 start, since Giolito is going to be out for at least this wild card round and maybe the playoffs, right? And the good thing about, if you can get past this round, Garrett Crochet will have the opportunity to pitch multiple times in a series, so it won't be too concerning, right? That Giolito is out once you get past this round, but until then, they have to rely on maybe a Connolly early in a Game 3, which is, a huge pressure, especially because it's a win-or-go-home moment. Yeah, I'll be watching that tonight. Looking forward to a big game in the Bronx. And, we'll stay going back to the Celtics here. We will have coverage throughout the week, highlights and whatever, as training camp begins. And until next time, if I can find my outro song, where is it? There it is. Until next time, go Celtics.
Brown lets it fly. Bottom, a three.
From behind, knocking it away. Tatum cashes in.
Pritchard got it back inside. And
Brown lets it fly. Bottom, a three.
From behind.